Hello YouTube, today we are talking about Jim Butcher's first book in the Dresden Files, Stormfront. Now I picked up this book because I had heard about it from a couple of other booktubers and it sounded really different from things that I normally pick up and read. I'm a big high fantasy guy, your Wheel of Times, your Malazan Book of the Fallen obviously, your Name of the Winds. Those kind of big fat fantasy books I really enjoy reading. However, the problem is, especially when you're going through a series, when you finish one of those books, you're not quite ready to jump into another huge, thick book. I like to get some smaller books, finished and read. And the Dresden Files, I've heard from many people, and I thought looking at it, would be a perfect series to kind of fill that gap. I could read one or two of them pretty quickly between these big books before jumping into another thick book. And that's exactly what this first one, Stormfront, turned out to be. I was very happily surprised with it. It was a page turner, got in and out in under 36 hours, finished the book, and it was enjoyable. I liked it. Now, if you don't know, the basic idea of the Dresden Files is a wizard detective named Harry Dresden who lives in modern-day Chicago, or at least the first book, Chicago in the year 2000. He is solving crimes. Really, the great thing about the Dresden Files is that they are a perfect mix between pulpy, mystery, crime novels with fantasy elements kind of perfectly thrown in. Now, I like the odd mystery novel from time to time, but not really my thing. The closest thing I probably come to them is like the Dan Brown Da Vinci books that I like to read, but that's not really even crime. That's kind of a different thing. But even I, someone who didn't really love that genre, because I love fantasy and some of the elements thrown in there, really enjoy the Dresden Files, or at least this book, Stormfront. There was enough in the world that was fantasy-esque, not just that Harry was a wizard, but sort of all these ideas of fairies and demons, potions, the Never Never, which you don't really hear a lot about, but there's apparently this like other world in our world. All of that was done with some obvious flair and some obvious thought that I really appreciated. I'm going to contrast this with the book that also took place in the modern day and tried to posit that there was like magic world happening in our modern day. The Artemis Fowl series. Now, I understand that's a YA novel, but whenever it talked about sort of these fairy ideas in our world in those novels, it just kind of felt like they were making it up on the spot, and it's just like, oh yeah, let's just throw in some fantasy stuff, and it was not my favorite. It didn't feel believable, but this fantasy world on top of our real world in the Dresden Files series feels real, feels lived in, it feels like there's some weight to it. Another thing I really liked about these books is it doesn't shy away from mature themes, and I don't mean just sexually, although there is sex in this book, but it's an adult wizard, I was gonna say crime fighter, not, I guess kind of a crime fighter, more detective. And so, you're gonna get descriptions of gruesome things that happen on crime scenes, or there's going to be language, there's going to be a whole ton of mature themes that I really appreciate not shying away from in a book like this. It's definitely not a YA novel, which the second time I kind of went after YAs. I like YA novels, fine, but I think you lack some depth if you sort of purposefully kind of wait in the middle between YA and adult. So I appreciate that this book did not do that. The main character, Harry Dresden, kind of a plus and a minus for me. Plus in that he seems a really well lived in character. He's this gruff detective, kind of pessimistic. He obviously has a troubled backstory that we hear a little bit about, but I think we'll hear more about. I really appreciated being in the first person perspective. It was different from a lot of books that I had read, but it also let you into his head, explained why you're not getting so much backstory, because you're in his head, he knows his backstory, and so I thought that was a really clever way of getting us to know the character without really having to give us a huge backstory. The negative is that I only go so far with like gruff, pessimistic, or I don't know, slightly chauvinistic? Might be a little too harsh, but kind of a guy's guy. I only go so far with that kind of character, but it didn't lessen my enjoyment of this. And I think I've heard from other people that he grows in that aspect as he goes on. So this is kind of his most immature sense. That brings me to another one of my weaknesses, and this is a common complaint against the Dresden Files. It is very male-gazy, meaning that especially descriptions of women are all about their looks and whether it's good or bad from like an attractive perspective. That was noticeable, and it was not just like distracting and sort of frustrating, but like bad writing at times. Like I felt like there was just a checklist of descriptions that he would go through when he was describing a woman. Hairstyle, check. Makeup, check. Boobs, check. Legs, check. What they're wearing, check. If Harry was attracted to them or not, check. Like that was every single one. Even people who were not at all sexual objects to him and like his friends were like that. So that does get annoying after a while. The actual plot itself I thought was really fun. It was a good, fast-paced novel, and whatever negatives I say about this book, it has to bear in mind that I read this book in 2 days, and not even like just sitting down and that's all I did. I mean, I just wanted to read and I kept reading, and then when I came back to it, I kept reading again, and you just read big chunks and you finish it out. It's an easy, fun read, and that's exactly what I wanted, so I cannot give Stormfront, the first book in the Harry Dresden Files, anything lower than a 7, and so that's what I'm going to give it, a 7 out of 10. I also give that knowing that there's a lot of potential in these books that I recognized, and I'm going to go on, I'm going to read the second one and explore these characters a little more. Thought it was really well done, 7 out of 10. Would recommend, especially as kind of a break novel as you're reading larger series. Thank you so much for watching this book review. Please like this video. Let me know what you think about the Dresden Files as a whole, and especially this first book, Stormfront, in the comments below. And subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much. First in, last out.